And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome to the Michael Gaddis Show on KCBQ AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis. I am a top producing real estate broker, a licensed California attorney, and an NMLS licensed mortgage broker. I truly am San Diego's real estate expert. I am here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. to discuss anything and everything related to San Diego real estate. As always, I welcome any questions or issues that you would like to hear me discuss on the show. There are several ways that you can contact me. First, you could call me at 888-242-2272. That's 888-242-2272. You can also email me at michael@michaelgaddis.com, or you can visit my websites at either michaelgaddis.com or frontierloangroup.com. As you know, I am the CEO and NMLS licensed mortgage broker for Frontier Loan Group, Inc., or as we like to call it, FLG. FLG is licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate, license number 01449152. NMLS ID number 345305. I am also licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate as a real estate broker. My broker license number is 014-33800, and my NMLS license ID is 280011. Although FLG assists buyers with every type of loan, at FLG we specialize in assisting homeowners interested in reverse mortgages. Obviously, the demographic for reverse mortgages consists of homeowners over the age of 62. The more and more I talk to seniors, and I'm using air quotes around seniors, the more and more I become exposed to their cares and concerns, such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, trusts, estates, living wills, etc. Since I am exposed to these issues, I have asked an expert in the field of estate planning and elder law to join me on the show today. Now, before I introduce my special guest, I want all of you listening to realize that elder law and estate planning affects everyone, not just those 62 and older. First, we all need to create a plan for our estate and our medical care in the event of an emergency. And second, we all have loved ones that are getting older, so learning more about issues related to their cares and concern will help us help them. So my special guest today is Robert Dieringer of the San Diego Elder Law Center, and that's SanDiegoElderLaw.com, and his phone number is 619-235-4357. Robert, I'd really like to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Michael.
Well, Robert, why don't we start by you telling me a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. I come from a family of civil servants. My brother's in the military and the Army. My little brother's an educator. My brother-in-law is a police officer, and I have aunts and uncles who are pastors for the United Methodist Church. So growing up, the sense of giving back was always very important in my family. Once the healthcare crisis really came home, I was in law school, and at that point, I realized my calling in the service of others was in the field of elder law.
Well, that's interesting because that just hit my very next question, which is how did you get into elder law? So that's a very good indication of why. And just for everyone listening, Robert's a new father. What did you have, a son?
A daughter.
Oh, you had a new daughter. What's her name?
Her name's Frances Grace.
Oh, well, there you go, Frances. Your dad's on the radio right now. So let's get started with Medi-cal. What is Medi-cal, and why should we be concerned with it?
Medi-cal is California's version of Medicaid. Medicaid is a federally financed and state-administered public benefits program. It's unique from Medicare in that it is means-tested, in that it depends on how much money you have. It's very important for people to appreciate Medi-cal because it uniquely pays for long-term care services. Medicare does not. Many folks have experience with going to the hospital and being discharged to a rehab facility or a skilled nursing facility to recuperate. and they'll know that Medicare coverage only lasts for 100 days. Medi-cal, on the other hand, is available indefinitely for someone who needs skilled nursing care, provided that the means-tested eligibility rules are complied with.
So what does that mean, means-tested eligibility rules? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So it depends on your means, both your income and your assets. What we do is invite people into the office to discuss their finances and their estate plans in the context of these rules. Generally speaking, the folks best situated for long-term care Medi-cal planning are married individuals. There are great tools out there for single people, but married people in California are able to take advantage of anti-spousal impoverishment laws designed to help spouses with ill and institutionalized spouses get long-term Medi-cal care while maintaining their own standard of living.
Well, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer, and our special guest today is Robert Dieringer of SanDiegoElderLaw.com. So I perused through your website on SanDiegoElderLaw.com, and I was kind of looking through the Medi-cal planning section, and there's an area there where it talks about some myths and misconceptions regarding Medi-cal. You don't mind if we could go through a few of those? Is that okay?
That's a great idea.
Okay. Well, the first one I saw on there, myth number 1: an applicant must spend his resources down to $2,000. What is that true?
In most cases, not. No. For example, if you're married, you get a $119,220 community spouse resource allowance that is more than $2,000. So that's one exception to this myth. Another exception is that various assets are exempt. Tax qualified retirement plans, your principal residence, certain types of annuities, certain types of life insurance policies are all exempt in calculating whether you have too much money or not. And far too often we have people told to do things like liquidate your IRA, which is an absolutely bad idea because they don't have to do that because the rules don't require it.
Well, let me give you a real-life example of something, and maybe you can just kind of chime in a little bit. Recently, my father's live-in girlfriend passed away. She had died of cancer. They were not married, and she was living in his home. The home was in his name. Somehow, she was on Medi-cal, basically getting her cancer treatments. Now, somehow, Medi-cal found out that she was living there and now has put a lien on his properties, claiming that, it basically to recoup some of the costs of the, it's not Medi-cal, I'm sorry. They live in Florida, actually, so it's Medicaid. They live in Florida, so they put a lien on the property, basically claiming rights to some of the equity that's there. So let me ask you a question. What's the validity of that?
In California, that would be invalid because she was a live-in girlfriend.
Right.
In California, if you receive Medi-cal and you're over age 55 and you receive skilled nursing services and you don't have a disabled child, again, many exceptions apply. The state of California may have a right to reimbursement from your estate upon your death. If you're married, that right is delayed until your surviving spouse passes away. But it's certainly an issue to be concerned with.
So what you're saying is that because they weren't formally married and they didn't really commingle, she wasn't on title, things like that, that technically they should not be able to come after my father's assets, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And that just goes out because I'll just let you know, my father's girlfriend was 54 years old and he is 67. So she is not 62. So when we talk about elder law and Medicaid and Medi-cal, I think one of the important things I think everybody listening right now needs to understand is it's not just for elderly people. I mean, these issues that Robert is talking about apply to everybody. Sometimes we don't even realize they're going to apply to us. And that's the scary part. And that's why it's really important important to become educated about these types of things and to plan ahead of time, because believe me, I have an old adage that, it's kind of like you're sitting on train tracks and you hear, the sound of a train coming, the horn of a train. When do you get off the tracks? Do you wait until the train almost hits you, or do you just get off the tracks as soon as you hear the horn? Me, I'm one of those guys that gets off the tracks when I hear the horn. I don't want to sit there and wait till the locomotive's almost on top of me, but I tell you something, there's a lot of people out there that do.
Absolutely. And the saddest cases that we see involve people who are blindsided by chronic conditions like Alzheimer's, like dementia. Those types of illnesses can affect people at a relatively young age, people in their 50s, absolutely. So getting your estate plan together, talking with your family about these types of issues ahead of time will certainly ease the pain if something does end up happening to you or one of your loved ones.
Well, we're going to go to break now, and after we get back, we're going to continue our discussion with Robert Dieringer of the San Diego Elder Law Center, and we're going to talk more about Medi-cal, and we're going to go into estate planning as well. You're listening to The Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, theanswer.com. Hear us anywhere in San Diego and the world. AM 1170, The Answer.
Hey, Craig Sewing here, consumer activist. You hear me every day at 6 p.m. on KCBQ. My goal is to help you win in any marketplace. One of the things that applies to every single person that listens to our show and that's listening right now, you have a credit score, and more likely than not, it has inaccuracies on it. Nobody seems to understand how these things work. Here's what I can tell you. I have a credit expert that's a partner in the show named Iran Sinai. I call him the credit magician. If you've ever had any issues with your credit, you want to get your scores up, maybe a foreclosure, bankruptcy, or maybe just a collection. The city of San Diego can send parking tickets to collections. Crazy. Well, bad credit's a choice. Reach out to Iran Sinai. How do you do that? You go to our website, AmericanDreamElite.com. AmericanDreamElite.com. Hit me up on the contact form. I'll connect you with Iran. AmericanDreamElite.com. If you've ever had any credit issues whatsoever, AmericanDreamElite.com.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 014654993 and MLS 28001.
Hi, this is AJ Gupta from the Gupta Legal Center. You've probably seen us on the American Dream TV show and the Craig Sewing radio show. We're honored to be featured as the exclusive real estate attorney and honored to be trusted by Craig and all of his top producing realtors. Our office was also featured as a super lawyer representing California's top 5% of attorneys. You may not know whether you need an attorney or not. My suggestion is you kind of have an idea whether there's a problem or a question. So I suggest if you don't know whether you need an attorney or not, give us a call. We're happy to pick up the phone, give you a call back, figure out what it is that you need to have addressed. If we can't or don't know the issue, then we can definitely point you in the right direction. Our phone number is 619-866-3444. That's 619-866-3444, and that's GuptaLC.com. GUPTALC.com.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis, the CEO and managing broker of Frontier Loan Group. That's frontierloangroup.com. My special guest today is Robert Dieringer of the San Diego Elder Law Center, and that's sandiegoelderlaw.com. So before the break, we were talking a little bit about Medi-cal and some myths surrounding Medi-cal, and I'd like to continue that conversation a little bit. So number two, there's a myth on your website that says there is a penalty for sheltering your assets by changing countable non-exempt assets into exempt assets. Basically, if you come to someone like you and you try to basically rearrange your assets, what their myth is that there's a penalty associated with that. Is that true?
That is not true, and that's a great question there, Michael. One of the best ways to qualify for long-term care Medi-cal is to pay down your mortgage. Like I said before, your home is an exempt asset. So if you have too much money to qualify for Medi-cal and there's a balance on your home, paying down the mortgage will, or could in certain situations, help you qualify. And that certainly is not a penalized transaction.
Well, that's good to know, because that means that, as I was telling everybody, if people who are driving right now were to be proactive, basically get off the railroad tracks or prepare for it as soon as you hear the horn, I mean, now's a good time for people who might not even realize they might not need Medicaid in the future to contact someone like yourself and say, hey, how can I prepare to make sure that I'm going to get to maximize my benefits without exposing a lot of things? Is that basically what you're saying?
Absolutely. And there's a particular word of caution that I'd like to offer there is contact someone who's knowledgeable in this area and licensed in this area. There are a number of unscrupulous financial professionals out there, and I don't mean to slight anyone, but what I really am speaking about are annuity salesmen. People who say you can purchase this exempt asset for the purpose of qualifying for Medi-cal, and it's not a penalized transaction. So my answer to the last question as to whether structuring your assets is penalized or not, my answer was no, it's not. But nonetheless, there are a number of other issues to consider, whether it's financially reasonable, whether there's tax consequences, whether you're simply being taken advantage of. So don't move forward recklessly, and make sure you meet with someone who's qualified to answer your questions.
Well, I think you bring up a very important point, Robert, and don't worry about necessarily talking about this type of issue, because there are a lot of unscrupulous people out there, and they occur in every industry and every field. And, you know, for example, as I mentioned, I do reverse mortgages, so I do a lot of reverse mortgages. And you know who hits me up all the time? Annuity salesmen. Hey, how you like to, how about your clients? Can you introduce me? No, I'm not going to introduce you to. No, I'm not. Mm-hmm. But they hit me up all the time trying to induce me or try to say, hey, look, you know, I can really help your guy out or your client. And, you know, it frustrates me a little bit. I understand they have a job to do. I understand that. But I do the best I can to protect my my clients from carpetbaggers, so to speak. So I don't want that type of thing. So it's a good thing you brought that up, that it is, you have to take caution with who you take advice from.
Absolutely. And a great rule of thumb is, if they can't explain it to you so you can understand it, there's probably something wrong. You know, Michael, you and I just briefly talked about reverse mortgages a short time ago, and I found you to be very clear in your explanation of the rules. And if someone can't do that for you, listeners out there, there's probably a problem.
Yeah, I think that goes with everything. Anytime you go to somebody, I mean, it's one thing to go to somebody and have them talk at you. It's another thing to have them talk to you and to make sure that you understand exactly what it is. Because you're right. If you cannot put it to a point where it's easily understandable, there's something wrong. If you're like, well, I don't know, I think it sounds good, don't do it. Don't do it.
Absolutely.
So let's go on to myth number 3, because I find some of these myths on your website fascinating. Myth number 3, the at-home spouse of a nursing home resident receiving long-term Medi-cal can keep only $117,240 of additional assets. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. Or it is correct with certain exceptions. That's the lawyer's answer there. Certain exceptions apply. The at-home spouse does have a limit, but it doesn't include certain things like tax-qualified retirement plans, your principal residence, and more importantly, it's subject to increase by court order. So for a lot of people that do have too much in brokerage accounts, annuities, whatever it might be, there are occasions where we're able to go to court very easily and say, Your Honor, the amount of money that the at-home spouse has is simply not enough. So that is another myth that's perpetuated out there.
Well, you know, I just saw another myth on your website that just kind of stuck out at me. It says, after the death of the Medi-cal beneficiary, the state of California will take the family home or any other available family assets to pay for the Medi-cal benefits received. And this is so everybody out there listening to what Robert's going to say about this.
They're not going to do it right away, but there certainly is cause for concern if you or a loved one is considering going on Medi-cal. Most people come to us worried that the state's going to put a lien on their home. There is some legal authority for that, but we don't see it happen all that often. The way the state is in the practice and custom of seeking to recover against the states includes filing creditors' claims in the estate administration process. So many people out there may have had the experience of administering a will and probate or a trust when someone dies, and it's in that process that Medi-cal gets paid back. So you should be concerned about Medi-cal seeking reimbursement, but it's not necessarily going to happen by them putting a lien on your home. But again, it's really important for you to plan because there are things that they're able to do. Another thing to be aware of is there are certain exceptions that apply. If you have a surviving spouse, there is not going to be recovery until the death of the surviving spouse. If you have a disabled child, there will not be recovery at all. If you're under age 55, there will not be recovery at all. So make sure you speak with someone who knows what the exceptions are, because these blanket rules are often reasons for people to feel scared when they shouldn't be.
Well, Robert, I think you definitely illustrate a point, which is, first of all, you need to plan. I mean, that seems to be the theme of this, is you have to plan. You can't just pretend it's not happening. Second of all, I think people need to realize the cost of care and long-term care when you get older can be extremely expensive, and that's why people use Medi-cal, to try to rely on that. So I think it's really important, if you do want to plan and you do want to be prepared, to talk to somebody who really knows what they're talking about. And I think that is my third point. And I think you can tell by listening to Robert right now as he rattles this stuff off. And if you were in studio with me right now, you could just see him. He just his brain, I could see his brain just rattling this stuff off. He knows his stuff. And that's what's important, because a lot of times there's a lot of, I'll say, charlatans out there who claim to know what they're doing, or dabble in a field and think they're experts in it. But what you really have to do is find someone who is an expert in their field. So, again, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am Michael Gaddis of FrontierLoanGroup.com. My special guest today is Robert Dieringer of San Diego ElderLawCenter.com. So, I think that one of the things that, that you mentioned there as we were talking about was, that the potential exposure that people can have when they take Medi-cal. I mean, when you take Medi-cal, Medi-cal's a reimbursement program. Basically, they're going to front the cost and they're going to reimburse it if there's reimbursable assets. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say, but there are wonderful planning opportunities available. For example, you can transfer your home to your spouse as their sole and separate property in order to avoid recovery from your estate if you are receiving Medi-cal. You can include provisions that will allow your spouse to transfer your property to him or herself if you can't do so because you're incapacitated. So while it is true, there are some very wonderful planning opportunities available.
Well, I think, one thing I'd like to mention is that, a lot of times I'll hear stuff like, let's take tax law, for example. Somebody will say, well, those tax laws, they're just for the rich. The rich are the only ones let's say they're not for the rich. They're for everyone. And it's just that wealthy people tend to take advantage of them.
That is such a great point. One thing that drives me nuts, and it happens few times a year, someone calls in and says something stupid like, my mom was sick, so we had her sign a deed giving me and my brother the home. People who informally resolve these types of issues without considering the tax consequences may be doing themselves a huge disservice. For example, there are things called capital gains taxes. Those are the taxes you pay on the difference between what you bought something at and what you sold it at. There are ways to minimize capital gains taxes, especially with real estate. So if you're going to be engaging in any kind of real estate transaction, you should certainly consider the capital gains tax implications, and you can certainly plan for capital gains taxes even if you're a middle-class family.
So what I think what we're learning here is that, if you're one of those people out there who thinks that you can go to Google. I saw really something funny today on my wife showed it to me. She got it on Facebook. It was a coffee mug, and it said, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. And I laughed at that because that applies to, to the law too. And it's kind of like, people think now because of the internet, they could Google anything and they can get all the information in the world. You can't do that, people. There are so many nuances. You can't do that. A Google search is not going to solve all your problems. You need to go to somebody and you say, well, I don't want to spend money on doing some planning. Well, the problem is either you pay up front a little bit of money to get really good, solid advice, or you pay for it when all of a sudden everybody's coming to you, just like you said, for capital gains tax or all these other things that you could have been avoided if you just took the time and a little bit of energy to go and talk to somebody who really knew what they were talking about. So I think that's a really important point. I get passionate about it, as you could tell, because it's something that goes not just in your industry, but every single industry there is. It's just because as people have more and more access to information, now they just kind of have a feeling that they could just Google anything and get all the information that they need, whatsoever. So I want to ask you another question here. It says here, myth number 4 on your website, there is a 30 or 60-month ineligibility penalty for any transfer or gifts. Is that true?
That is not true in California. California has a 30-month look-back period, which is the period of time in which the government asks, have any gifts been made for the purpose of qualifying for Medi-cal? As is the case with most things, certain exceptions apply to whether a transfer is a penalized transfer during this 30-month look-back period.
Well, when we get back from our break, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to stop talking about Medi-cal because we could keep talking about it for an entire show. We're going to switch gears and talk more about estate planning and why you should really be thinking about, setting the plan for your future together. So you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, The Answer.
Hey, San Diego, Craig Sewing here. Look, one of the things that nobody likes to hear is that they got bugs in their home. Almost all California homes have some sort of bug or termite problem. It's not a cool thing to have bugs running around your house, so I'm going to help you get rid of them. I want you to connect with Lloyd's Pest Control. These are our good friends of the Craig Sewing Show. They can help you. They've been in business, putting bugs out of business since 1931. They'll do a free inspection for you. If you want to get your biggest investment checked out, make sure there's not bugs or termites, go to LloydPest.com. That's LloydPest.com and get a free inspection of your real estate today.
Did you know that you can make up to 6 times more with vacation rentals than with long-term leasing? By investing in vacation rentals and partnering with Vacasa, you can cash your check while we do all the work. Vacasa is a full-service vacation rental management company. We handle everything from guest marketing and booking to home maintenance and security. If you want more information about Vacasa, please visit online or call 503-305-4520. Again, that's 503-305-4520. Or visit Vacasa.com. That's Vacasa.com. Vacasa, vacation rentals made easy.
Hey, Craig Sewing here. There's no shortage of commercials out there, whether it's TV, radio, even social media. And heck, I even saw an infomercial for solar. You see it everywhere these days. Well, it's because solar is important. It can reduce your electric bill. It's good for the planet. And it's just a great thing to do with your home. It can add value to it. However, there is so much misinformation. Just because somebody is out there advertising does not make them a reliable source. I want to introduce you to my good friends with Baker Electric Solar. The owner, Mike Teresa, I've got to know him really well. This is the only company that I would recommend for you to reduce your electric bill through solar energy. Such a smart move. It's time to do it. Here's how you reach out to them. BakerElectricSolar.com. BakerElectricSolar.com. They will talk to you for free. They'll give you an assessment, and they will help you reduce that electric bill. And again, this is the only group that I trust. BakerElectricSolar.com.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 0146543 and MLS 28001.
Going Going through divorce can be very stressful. It is important to know your rights. I'm attorney Ilona Antonian. I'm a certified family law specialist. For over a decade, I've been helping San Diegans win their divorce and custody cases. If you have questions about divorce, property division, child or spousal support, modification of orders, or find yourself in a custody battle, please call us at 619-696-1100. Find us online at expertdivorcelaw.com, where you can download our free divorce, mediation, and recovery guides that I hope you find useful.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of FrontierLoanGroup.com. My special guest today is Robert Dieringer of the San Diego Elder Law Center, and that's SanDiegoElderLaw.com. We're switching gears now. We're going to talk a little bit about estate planning, and that word keeps coming up, plan. I mean, that was the theme of the first two segments, and now we come back to another word, estate planning. So why is estate planning so important, Robert?
There are two reasons. The first reason everyone sort of knows of, which is death. When you pass away, you want to make sure that your family isn't burdened with unreasonable taxes and administrative expenses. The second reason is more important. It's incapacity. Many of us don't die immediately. Many of us have prolonged periods where we need the assistance of our family and our loved ones to help us make correct decisions. And an estate plan with powers of attorney, trusts, healthcare directives allows for our family members and friends to assist us if we can't help ourselves.
Well, let me tell you something. That's very interesting, because I had somebody call me the other day, and they told me that it was a real estate professional, and they were looking for a house for their client. They said that their client was a woman whose husband was basically a paraplegic. He was basically in a I don't know how to say, a vegetative state, so to speak. And I asked I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, he's about 47 years old. He went to the dentist to basically have some dental work done. They gave him either the wrong anesthetic or too much of it. Whatever it is, he passed out in their dental chair. And the dentist waited like 10, 12 minutes before they called an ambulance. And by the time the ambulance got there, there had been so much damage to his brain. So now he was basically in this state. So she had to take care of him. So she needed a particular type of home to take care of him. And, one with, one story, wide doors, things like that, because she had to take care of him. And you know what she told me? She said, it's really sad because my client tells me all the time that her and her husband had plans to travel. They had plans to go do all these things when they retired. And she goes, and now she's just trying to find a house that she could basically take care of him like a baby. Basically, he's like a baby for the rest of his life. And she says, it's just tragic what can happen to us when we don't realize it. And that's why I'm trying to say, as I mentioned earlier, we never know what's going to happen in the future to us. That's why, planning for incapacity like this is so important, because, this guy was just going to the dentist to get some dental work done, and look what happened to him. Not to scare everybody about dentists. I'm just using this as an example. But, he went to do that, and it could be like, driving on the car. We live in Southern California, where people drive, 80 to 85 miles an hour on a freeway in a 4,000-pound steel box. Things in a matter of a second can change for us. So planning for incapacity and death is extremely important, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We can't be ostriches and put our heads in the sand thinking that bad things won't happen to us. They quite possibly could. Not to be an alarmist about it and say that, you should do this type of planning because something is certainly going to happen to you. No, it's just that being responsible and being prudent involves taking a realistic approach towards your estate plan so that if something does happen, however unlikely, you'll be prepared and you won't have to jump through a number of hoops to fix things after the fact.
Well, let me ask you a question, and it's a frequent. Sometimes I meet people because as I said, I do a lot of reverse mortgages, so I interact with a lot of people who have put some sort of estate planning in plan. Now, some people come up and tell me, "Well, I have a will." Is a will enough, or do you recommend a trust? What do you recommend?
It depends. So, The law in California requires that an estate be administered with court oversight in the probate court if the estate is of a certain value. It's over $50,000 if it's real property, over $150,000 if it's personal property, which includes bank accounts, money, stocks, bonds, all of that. So if your estate is of sufficient value, you're going to have to go to probate court to have the property passed along to your heirs, unless you have a trust or a variety of other methods for transfer upon death. The benefit to a trust that a will doesn't offer, in addition to avoiding probate court, is that it provides for a management of your estate in the event of your incapacity. So will only says who gets what and doesn't avoid probate. Trust, on the other hand, avoids probate and it plans for incapacity. So a trust for most people, depending on how much money they have, is usually the best bet.
That's the most thorough preparation you can do.
Absolutely.
With proper advice, with proper quality advice. That's the best way to go.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you. Let me tell you something else. I had I met a client 2 weeks ago. I was meeting at their house. They were elderly. One was 84. One was 86. I was talking to them a little bit about a reverse mortgage. And I said, well, I need to see a copy of your trust because this particular lender that I was going to send him to requires copies of the trust to make sure there's no conflict with what the reverse mortgage. So they go and they said, okay, we have it in our file cabinet in the back. So they go to their garage, and I hear them fumbling around in the garage, and they come back out probably 4 or 5 minutes later, and they bring these 3 sets of documents to me, and the documents are they look like they were 50 years old. I mean, the paper was like turning yellow and it was real crisp. I mean, and it said on the front, trust and will, and so my question to you is this. I know a lot of people out there may have gotten, some estate planning done maybe 25, 30 years ago. What is the importance of having somebody look at your current estate plan to make sure that nothing has changed, or laws, or maybe even circumstances? Would you highly recommend somebody to go and do something like that, to have it re-reviewed?
Absolutely. The reasons you just described are good reasons to revisit your estate plan. Change in family circumstances, change in laws. And let me illustrate one particular change that we see time and time again. Back in the 1990s and even the early 2000s, estate taxes were incredibly different than they are today. The lifetime exclusion amount, the total amount of money that you had to have in order to be taxed upon your death, if I recall, in 2003, I believe it was $675,000. Now it's $5.43 million. So the tax laws over the past several decades have changed immensely. Estate plans and trusts that we see from the 1990s usually have tax avoidance language that is not necessary today and also harmful today. So if you do have a trust from the 1990s, chances are it has out-of-date tax planning language that you would most likely want an attorney to at least look over.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, when I asked the people, I said, have you had this looked at? Oh, no, that's okay. Our guy who did this, he was the top in his industry. And I said, well, that's true. I said, but that was, 30 years ago? I said, he was the top in his industry, 30 years ago. I said, a lot of things have changed. I said, a lot of things in your life has changed. I said, you have new grandchildren. I said, you have, lots of different things. You have new assets. I said, and plus the laws have changed. So I always highly recommend that they, when I encounter those types of things, that they, get a second opinion and have it looked at. And, I think that's really an important thing that they do, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And to loop back to the early part of our conversation, most people will want to make sure that they have Medi-cal planning authority in their estate plan. So not only has tax law changed very significantly over the past several decades, but Medi-cal law has also changed very significantly.
Well, I can imagine, because when something happens to you that you don't expect, and your family and loved ones are there trying to get the authorities they need and trying to put the pieces in place to be able to help you. If you haven't planned, and there's that word again, if you haven't planned, you could really add a lot of stress to the situation, a lot more stress than probably needs to be there if you would have properly, planned again ahead. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. When something happens to your family, you want to be focused on your family and their care needs. You don't want to be focused on the law. You want to be done with all that mess. So doing it ahead of time allows you to focus on your loved ones.
Well, when we get back, we're going to talk to Robert Dieringer of San Diego Elder Law Center, and I'm going to ask him some questions about the effects of a reverse mortgage on social benefits. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, The Answer.
What if you could safely grow your retirement account with a reasonable rate of return with no risk of principal? Hi, this is Dave Harris with Wealth Preservation, specializing in retirement income and insurance planning. There's nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans protect and grow their retirement savings. For over 4 decades, we have helped families achieve financial success. If you need help with your retirement planning, please visit me online or call me today. My number is 800-313-PLAN, or visit me online at wealthpreservationllc.com.
Hi, this is John Beaudry, the landscape contractor. There's nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans create gardens where they can spend time outdoors in our fantastic weather and save money on their water bills. I've helped hundreds of people create outdoor spaces where they can literally live outdoors. If you need help with your landscape, I'll be happy to discuss it with you for free. No strings attached, just great advice. My number is 619-929-9140, or visit me online at beaudrydesign.com. That's BEAUDRY design.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 0146543 and MLS 28001.
Your home should be a place that you love coming to. Hi, I'm Nikki Klug, interior designer, and there is nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans live in homes that they fall madly in love with. I've helped hundreds of homeowners experience a sense of luxury, rejuvenation, and inspiration in their everyday lives. If you need help creating a home that you love, please visit me online at nikkiklugdesign.com or call me at 619-948-7173.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of FrontierLoanGroup.com, and my special guest today is Robert Dieringer of the San Diego Elder Law Center. That's SanDiegoElderLaw.com. And just to make sure I do everything correctly, as you know, Frontier Loan Group is licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate, license number 01449152, NMLS ID number 345305. I am also licensed by the California Bureau of Real Estate as a real estate broker. My broker license number is 014-33800, and my NMLS ID is 280011. So now, Robert, I want to talk to you about something that's really, really important to me, and it's kind of a focus of what I do. We mentioned it before, is reverse mortgages. Now, a lot of people are starting to consider reverse mortgages. I read a statistic the other day that said, I think it was 10,000 people every day are turning age 62. I mean, there's just a huge amount of people that are now becoming eligible for these things. And one of the most frequently asked questions that I get from people who are, thinking about obtaining a reverse mortgage or the fact that, does a reverse mortgage have an impact on social benefits? And that's an important thing, because as we've talked about throughout this show, a lot of these people are depending on social benefits like Medi-cal, supplemental Social Security, that type of income, to basically sustain themselves. So I guess let's start and start the discussion. What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that you would need to look at your particular financial portfolio before you made any type of decision concerning reverse mortgages. What One particular piece of advice that I would have across the board in terms of how a reverse mortgage may impact your public benefits eligibility is that most public benefits like Medi-cal and SSI that are means tested depend on how much money you have. So if you take out a reverse mortgage with a lump sum and deposit all of that money into the bank, it may be a problem. Instead, if you take out a line of credit reverse mortgage that you can draw from as you need the money, you won't have a lump sum sitting in your bank account. For most people, a line of credit reverse mortgage is a much better idea than taking out a lump sum at one time because you don't have money sitting in the bank that could potentially affect your eligibility for Medi-cal or SSI should you need it.
So what you're saying is that a reverse mortgage isn't necessarily a bad thing in your opinion. It is something, it's a tool that you can utilize, but you need to utilize it properly so as not to affect your benefits. And if you take it out in a lump sum, it could be somewhat problematic with Medi-cal. But if you take it in the form of a line of credit and take distributions out that way, it should not affect your Medi-cal benefits.
It shouldn't. And taking things on a case-by-case basis is very important. But I think as a rule of thumb, it would be safe to say that a line of credit is a much safer approach when it comes to reverse mortgages.
Well, I think that's really important information, especially for those that are listening right now that are considering a reverse mortgage. Just make sure that you do a thorough analysis of your situation just to make sure. I mean, reverse mortgages are one of those things where they're very enigmatic. You know, they're not for everyone. I mean, but for some, they can be literally life-changing. You can literally change the direction of your life. Others, it's not so good. I mean, it's more of a luxury, so to speak. It's something that you could do, but you don't need to do. However, before you make that leap, it is really important that you talk to somebody like Robert just to make sure that you've got all your I's dotted and T's crossed, because you might not think about that. You might, think, I'm going to go and get this reverse mortgage and I'm going to take this lump sum out and it sounds great. And then you're going to find out it's going to impact your ability to either obtain or it's going to affect somehow Medi-cal. And that might not have been something that you had taken into consideration at the time you got the reverse mortgage. Like for myself, I always like to recommend to my clients that they do obtain the advice of someone like Robert, because getting the advice of someone like Robert is really critical when it comes to those types of things. But what about supplemental Social Security benefits? What's your feeling on that?
SSI or supplemental security income it really is a poverty-based program. There certainly are people out there that are able to qualify for SSI, but I really don't see many middle-class people seeking eligibility for SSI, just because the income levels, the maximum amount of income that you're allowed to earn is so incredibly low. If you're living out in the community, I believe it's right around $800, and if you're living in a facility, in a boarding care facility, it's around $1,100. So you need to really have very little income that most people who are receiving traditional Social Security, maybe a pension through the military, or a teacher's pension have far more than. So SSI is certainly an available public benefit out there, but it's not as useful for the middle class.
Well, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer, and our special guest today is Robert Dieringer of the San Diego Elder Law Center. That's SanDiegoElderLaw.com. So I guess what you're saying is, although a reverse mortgage might have an impact on maybe supplemental Social Security benefits, overall, it's probably not overly relevant because most of the people who are looking to get a reverse mortgage are probably do not have supplemental Social Security.
Absolutely. I would just really bet that the vast majority of people that you see, Michael, who come into your office considering a reverse mortgage have Social Security, traditional Social Security income that renders them ineligible for SSI.
Well, I think that the prevalent theme, as I've mentioned multiple times during this show, is planning. And I think that Robert has been here today to really kind of show us how important it is to plan, not just for after death, but for in the case of incapacity or in the case of preparing to obtain certain benefits. I mean, it's really important that you, and probably many of you out there listening right now didn't even realize that there would be any planning involved in any of this stuff. You're probably like, well, if I need it, I need it. And I guess a lot of people, because I know, just to be honest with you, Robert, I mean, I'm a lawyer as well. I didn't know a lot of this. I mean, I didn't know that, there's a lot of mechanisms and ways to be able to prepare for Medi-cal, especially. That's a very, very specialized niche. And you have a very, very kind of unique, perspective and ability that a lot of other people don't. Your knowledge is very keen in that particular area. So I think everyone who has questions or issues regarding this type of whether it be elder law or estate planning or trust or preparing for some sort of incapacity should contact the someone like Robert and at the San Diego Elder Law Center. I mean, it's I had the pleasure of having Philip Lindsley, who is, I believe, the main attorney at the San Diego Law Center. I had him on a TV program and I interviewed him, and he's a wealth of knowledge too. So between you two, it's a lot of knowledge regarding this area of law. And as you can tell during this last hour that we've been speaking, I mean, there's a lot of things that Robert has brought up that I know a lot of you who are listening have never thought of. And that's what makes it important. And that's what gives people like Robert value, because you don't think of these things. You don't know what you don't know, and Robert knows what you don't know, and it's really important that you really take some time to plan for these things so that you don't end up like the person I was talking about in the previous segment in the dental chair. I mean, you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be his wife. You don't want to be him. You want to plan and be ready for anything that could possibly happen. Would you say that's true, Robert?
Absolutely, yes. It's the age-old adage, measure twice, cut once, applies both to carpentry as well as your estate plan. And you don't want to be fixing a crooked door in your home, just like you don't want to be fixing a crooked estate plan. Both tasks of fixing a broken problem will be more expensive than doing it right in the first place.
Well, let me ask you a quick question before we end for the day, and that's something I saw on your website, an integrated estate plan. What is an integrated estate plan?
Great question. An integrated estate plan is an estate plan that takes into consideration your finances, your healthcare needs, your family needs, and your testamentary wishes. So you want to make sure that nothing is considered in isolation. You want to make sure that whoever you're speaking with can explain what you might be looking at in terms of long-term care costs, what you might be looking at in terms of taxes, what you might be needing to consider in terms of the law, and having someone who can make sure that everything is looked at in an integrated fashion is what we mean by an integrated estate plan.
So basically, when integrate, it's an all-encompassing look at your life. It's kind of like when you buy one of those certified used cars. It's not a used car; it's certified because they literally thoroughly look through the entire car to see everything that's going on and to see what they need to do to maximize the performance of that car. And that's basically what this integrated estate plan is. It takes a look at your life, takes a look at everything that's going on in your life, and tries to put everything together in one comprehensive plan so that you have everything covered no matter what happens.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank my guest today, Robert Dieringer of the San Diego Elder Law Center. If you want to get in touch with Robert, you can go to SanDiegoElderLaw.com, or you can call him at 619-235-4357. That's 619-235-4357. 4357. So thank you, Robert. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to come in here and see us.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, that does it for today. I want to thank you all for listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. discussing anything and everything related to real estate. If you want to contact me with questions or topics for the show, please feel free to email me at michael@michaelgaddis.com or visit my websites at michaelgaddis.com or frontierloangroup.com. Again, you You have been listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170. The Answer. Good night.